All right, Nexus 5 versus iPhone 5S. This is going to be sort of a very, very general, very unspecific, untechnological video of these two devices. And when I say that, I just mean, an overall sort of opinion coming from somebody who appreciates and enjoys mobile technology, somebody who's surrounded by mobile technology, somebody who's used these phones among other phones, and how I feel compared to the more geeky side of the internet. And when people talk about hardware specs and how that should make a difference in how you choose things. No, it's not what this is going to be about. This is going to be just about how the devices feel, look, and operate in your hand, and how you might use that to sort of decide what phone you want to buy. So, these are definitely two top-of-the-line phones. We've got our best of the best Android phone, arguably, but certainly the most pure Android phone on the right, and the top-of-the-line iPhone 5S from Apple, even in the fancy new gold color on the left. If you're trying to decide between these two phones, the first thing you've got to think about is they're sort of competing in different markets. The iPhone is usually sold in the US on contract, which means you're going to pay a subsidized price from your carrier. Nexus 4, while that does happen on like Sprint and some of the other companies, the big demand for this phone is that you can buy it unlocked direct from Google and use it on any carrier you want, anywhere over the world, making it sort of geared towards a little bit different market. People that buy unlocked phones generally sort of do that because they want to travel, or they like to play with their phones, or they root their phones, or they're more into technology than they are than the people that are sort of looking for an iPhone in general. And don't take that the wrong way, but that's in general. You have a lot of people that are sort of more not concerned about technology and the specifics. They just want something that works. They want something that works well. They don't know the ins and out of unlocked. They don't know the ins and out of software and hardware and specs and Retina and blah blah blah. They just want a phone that does what they want, or that works for them, and they want something that's good. So again, these phones sort of don't really compete on that same level. The Galaxy S4, and the iPhone 5S might be a little bit more of a competition. But for now, we're going to just talk about these two phones because they are sort of top of the line in their own respect. Obviously, the biggest noticeable difference is the size and the screen size compared to these two phones. I mean, we've got a 4-inch Retina display on the iPhone 5S and a 5-inch sort of high-resolution display on the Nexus 5. And so how do these feel in your hands? My hands are sort of smallish, and so you can see that the Nexus 5 is substantially bigger in sort of a smaller hand. I'm 5'9". I don't know how you would measure my hand size, if there's an inch or something associated with that. But for me, the Nexus 5 feels a little bit too big. It's definitely usable. It's not like the Galaxy Mega or the Galaxy Note. I mean, you can certainly operate this phone with one hand. I can reach most of the screen. Most of it is easy to get to. I do have to shuffle it around occasionally, to reach stuff. But if you're a woman or if you're a guy with smaller hands, the iPhone 5S certainly fits in your hand a lot easier. You can definitely reach everything without really moving the phone around too much. Fit and finish of the phones, very, very different as well. iPhone solid sort of aluminum build on the new series. You do have some glass inlays in the screen, different colors and stuff, but this is a much, much more solid feeling phone than the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5's build is plastic, but it's a good plastic. It's definitely a solid plastic. It's not cheap and chintzy feeling like the Galaxy series. However, it's not as high quality as maybe the iPhone 5C. The iPhone 5C build is really, really nice. This is also really, really nice. It's got a smooth texture to it. It doesn't feel slippery, and it doesn't feel cheap. It does feel good. Maybe not as good as some of the other plastic phones like the iPhone 5C, but again, very, very different in terms of quality of construction. Much, much more solid feeling device in the iPhone, much, much more robust feeling, but still decent enough to be considered. I would consider this high quality on the Nexus. It's not something that you would grab, and it doesn't feel cheap. It feels good. Otherwise, aesthetically, the Nexus has this weird inlaid camera, which kind of stands out, which, I don't know, gives it a unique sort of look to it. The logo on the back does feel sort of slippery. The sides are very, very smooth. The front is nice and plain. It does have this sort of strange white inlaid speaker grill up front, which I don't really care for, but whatever. Apple has added the sort of ring around the home button now to signify the Touch ID for their fingerprint scanner. Otherwise, this looks a lot like the 5. You got the colored metal edges, the colored metal back. and the glass in the camera and the new dual LED flash. So getting away from sort of the build and how these things look, we can talk kind of more about the software. You know, Apple and, iOS and Android are pretty substantially different. I mean, sure, they both run apps. Sure, they, you know, do the latest and greatest as far as what the developers have to offer. I mean, the strongest points of both these phones are certainly the apps and certainly the ecosystem. You know, if you're trying to decide between these two phones, the biggest things to think about are whether or not you want to go the iOS road or whether or not you want to go the Android road. I mean, typically if you're a Google fan and you enjoy Google services, which are free, like Google Docs, Google Mail, Google Voice, Chrome, you know, a lot of this stuff works really, 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 really well on Android. And I really like Android for that reason. I mean, I sync my entire life with Google, as disturbing as that may be. And so Android works for me really well. I get, you know, all of my apps, everything stays in sync. It's really easy. It's really free. I can get access to anything, anywhere, from any laptop or tablet or whatever, because I use Google. Apple is a little bit different. You know, they have iCloud services. They have, you know, sort of cloud-based things, but it's not as maybe seamless or maybe as rewarding as the Google experience, in my opinion. You definitely feel locked down when you use Apple hardware and Apple software. You're limited as far as what you can do on the phone. You know, that's maybe outside the scope of this video a little bit. I'm talking sort of about what Android differs from iOS. That's more of an Android versus iOS argument. But as far as the phones go, you know, they're both heavily integrated with their own company's ecosystem. So iOS on the iPhone 5, Android on the Nexus 5. One of the benefits in terms of software, talking about Android, is that if you root this phone, and the Nexus 5 is typically thought of as a developer phone, you can root this phone and put any software you want on it. It's going to make this phone really, really great as far as being able to do what you want, customizing the software, putting custom ROMs on there. It's going to be a powerhouse as far as that goes. With the iPhone 5S, they haven't yet figured out a way to jailbreak it. A lot of people like to jailbreak. They haven't figured that out yet. I'm sure they will eventually, but from what I've been told, it's actually been pretty hard to jailbreak iOS 7. So if you like customizing your device, can't really do that yet with the iPhone 5S. So that's something else you can consider. Jumping into a little bit more detail here, both really, really nice screens, both really, really accurate color displays. I think that the iPhone probably has a little bit of an edge color-wise over the Nexus 5. It's lacking a little bit of contrast, and it's lacking a little bit of color depth on the Nexus 5. And you only really see that when you have them in hand and you look at two photos side by side. You know, again, the Nexus 4 maybe had a worse display, I would say. Well, if you look at my Nexus 4 video, I don't really like the display on the Nexus 4. They've definitely upgraded the screen on the Nexus 5 quite a bit, and I do like it. I do think it's much, much better, much more user sort of pleasing to your eye than the Nexus 4 was, but still not probably not nearly as good as the iPhone 5, or even the HTC One has a really awesome display as well. Galaxy S4, great display as well, but it's AMOLED, so you know, it's going to look super saturated, and some people like that, and I tend to like that too sometimes. But iPhone 5S and the HTC One have the best displays right now, I think, in my opinion. Battery life, most of the day I get most of a day's use out of the iPhone 5S. I get most of a day's use out of the Nexus 5. I get, if you look at some of the stats here, I've got about 12 hours of use on the Nexus 5, and that's after 1 day of use, and that is, the majority of that is business-related stuff: texting, calling, web surfing, emails. Not a lot of video, not a lot of games. These 41% is the screen, followed by Android and some of the other core system processes. Again, I use my phones mostly for sort of business-related things. I don't play a lot of games. I don't do sort of a lot of, I don't know, non-business related stuff on there, but you know, very unscientific, unsort of technological comparison. They both last about a day on a charge. So unplug the phone at 7. By the time you get home from work, 6, 7 o'clock at night, you need to plug it back in. You know, I consider it average across the board for both of these phones. You know, if you look at some of the other phones like the Droid Razr Max or some of these more sort of battery focused phones, they probably offer a lot better battery. But these guys, in comparison to the other phones on the market, S4, HTC One, they're about the same. You get about a day's worth of use. These phones do have substantially different cameras. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons I would use the iPhone over the Nexus 5 is the camera. I think that the camera software in here is just, it's a nicer camera app. I think that the camera app in the Nexus 5 is just garbage. I think Google really needs to rework this app. I don't like the controls. I don't like the buttons. I just think it's ugly. I think it's hard to use. I think it's a pain. It's just not something that I enjoy using. I think that the camera resolution isn't that great on the Nexus 5 either. I think it's probably okay for most people. I think most people would probably say that it meets their needs, you know, as far as quality goes. But if you're in the market for a phone based on the camera or heavily into photography, you're going to like the camera in the iPhone 5S substantially more. It has the new dual LED flash, which, you know, works okay. If you're interested in seeing how that works, go check out my other video of the 5S's flash in the camera. Great low light sensor in the 5S. Not so great on the Nexus 5. I think that they could have done better with the camera. But again, you have to keep in mind that this is a lower priced phone and is not necessarily a direct competition to the iPhone 5S. But probably one of the biggest differences between these two devices is the camera. Other things to consider is, you know, Apple has this new Touch ID where you have your thumb scanner here or finger scanner. You can use more than your thumb. This works great. You know, it's not something that a lot of people would find useful, I think, right now. You know, basically it allows you to get into the device and authenticate sort of App Store purchases. I hope one day that they'll make that more integrated into iOS, where you basically never have to enter a password again ever for anything, and you can use your fingerprint. I think that would be pretty neat, as long as they do it securely and as long as it doesn't get stolen by the NSA. But it is sort of a gimmick. It is sort of one of the new things they talked about with the iPhone 5S, and they've marketed heavily. But it does work, and it does work well. So, you know, take that for what it is. There's no gimmicks on the Nexus 5 as far as I can tell. Everything's pretty solid. You know, it's basically your basic phone, camera, screen, and body. Yeah, so it's, you know, what you've seen in smartphones pretty much. And so, you know, in closing, it's really, really hard for me to decide which of these phones I like better. They both sort of scratch different itches. They both meet different needs. They both sort of are different and for different markets. You know, if I want one phone to do everything, if I was going to travel and I want one phone to do everything, it'd probably be the 5S. You know, it does what I need to do. As annoyed as I get with iOS and as locked down as I feel with iOS, it has all the apps I want. It has the security I want with this. If it gets stolen, I can lock it down and just remote wipe it, and I don't have to worry about somebody using the phone or selling it, because iOS 7 allows you to sort of lock it and it can't be reset. It's got a great camera. Great size. It's got 1,000,001 accessories. You know, you can go to any store, buy any accessory you want for the iPhone, and there's going to be tons. There's going to be waterproof cases. There's going to be, you know, Bluetooth, you know, accessories, speaker docks. There's just going to be a lot of cables. You know, I mean, the accessory market loves the iPhone. Not true for Android phones, mostly because there's so many of them, and they can't really make accessories for every 1,000,001 different Android phones there are on the market right now. So iPhone definitely meets that need for me. But, you know, as far as the Nexus 5 goes, I mean, this phone was $350 off contract, and how can you beat that? It's an awesome, awesome device. It's fast, it's smooth, the build quality is great, it's got the latest Google software, it's gonna get the latest Google software every time it comes out. It feels good in your hand. You know, it's got the power of Android 4.4, which is a great operating system, super smooth, super fast, no lag. They've done a really, really good job with this Nexus 5. And so, you know, coming from a sort of stance of a perfect device, or this idea of a perfect device, it's not there yet, in my opinion. I think that if I could take this hardware, you know, this A7 chip and the motion coprocessor and you know, the great camera, and just put Android on this phone, I'd have the perfect device. I'd have something that fits in my hand, that I like the build quality, that I like the camera, I like the hardware, I like the specs, I like everything about it. I just want Android on it. I don't want iOS. I don't want to feel locked down. You know, I do think that this phone is a little bit too big for my hands. I think that it just, I don't know, it could be a little bit smaller for me. And that's just preference more than anything. It doesn't mean it's too big. It just means it's too big for me. So I think that, you know, if you're trying to decide between these two phones, you're going to have to really decide what you want in a smartphone. If you want the power of Android and you want to go unlocked and you want to save yourself some money, this is a really, really killer device. If you want simple, you want easy, you want a great phone, you want something that has a great accessory market, you want something that, you know, people appreciate, has great resale value, iPhone 5S is the way to go there. So hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other stuff on YouTube.